My 18-month-old son Oliver suddenly became terrified of diaper changes at his $2,000 a month elite daycare. So I hid a camera in his diaper bag and discovered they were drugging all the babies with Benadryl to keep them unconscious for 8 hours straight, while one teenage girl watched 60 toddlers. But when I went to police, they warned me to stop because the owner, Mrs. Chen's sister, ran the state licensing department, and her husband was on city council until Oliver overdosed, and we united 200 parents to expose their 3 daycare centers where they'd been sedating infants for years. When my son Oliver turned 18 months old, he suddenly became terrified of diaper changes. This was the same little boy who used to giggle and play peekaboo during changes just 2 weeks ago. Now he'd cry and try to roll away the moment I reached for his diaper. Naturally, I asked the daycare if anything had happened. "Oh, he's just entering his independent phase. Totally normal," Miss Katie assured me with her perfect smile. I smiled back, wanting to believe her. I didn't think much about it until Oliver started refusing his bottles too. He'd push them away and cry, which was strange because he'd always loved his milk. I remember asking if they were having trouble feeding him at daycare. "Not at all. He drinks everything right up," Miss Katie said cheerfully. That's when I got truly suspicious. I started looking at Oliver's behavior more carefully, and I realized his worst days were always daycare days. He'd come home exhausted, way too exhausted for a toddler. He'd sleep from 5 p.m. straight through to morning, but on weekends, he'd be his normal energetic self. That's when I tested them in a subtle manner. "I'm thinking of switching Oliver to half days. I think full days might be too much for—" "Oh no, we don't offer half days," Miss Katie interrupted quickly. I stared at her. "But your website says you do?" I asked. Silence. She fumbled with some papers. "That's outdated. We're fully booked anyway." She turned away before I could ask more questions. By now I was extremely worried. This was Sunshine Academy, the most expensive and highest rated daycare in town. They had perfect reviews, waiting lists, and charged $2,000 a month. Every parent raved about them. That week, I bought a tiny USB camera online. I know recording was probably illegal, but I truly felt like I had no choice. I had a gut feeling Oliver was in danger. I hid it in his diaper bag between some burr cloths. My hands shook as I dropped him off that morning. When I watched the footage that night, I wanted to throw up. They had given Oliver something in his bottle that made him drowsy. Within 30 minutes, he was unconscious in his crib, and he stayed there all day, 8 hours straight. No diaper changes, no feedings, no interaction, just sleeping in his own waste. I could see at least 20 other toddlers in the same room with only one teenage girl watching them. She spent the entire time on her phone. My hands started shaking as I watched more footage. The owner, Mrs. Chen, came in briefly to take photos of herself reading to empty chairs. She posted these on their Facebook page later that day. "Another wonderful story time at Sunshine Academy," the caption read. I quietly retrieved the camera and planted it in different spots over the next week. What I discovered made me want to scream. They were putting Benadryl in all the bottles to keep the children sedated. The kitchen was disgusting, with mold on the walls and expired milk being poured into bottles. I saw them serving food that had been sitting out for hours. They had 3 staff watching 60 children but reported a 1-to-4 ratio to the state. Every inspection sheet on their wall was forged. What do you even do when you realize dozens of babies are being drugged? The first thing I did was take the footage to the police. The officer looked uncomfortable as soon as I mentioned Sunshine Academy. "Ma'am, you recorded this illegally. That's a crime. I'd be careful about making accusations against the Chens." That's when I learned the truth. Mrs. Chen's sister ran the state child care licensing department. Her husband sat on the city council that awarded daycare contracts. Her brother-in-law was the district attorney. And so I did the only thing I could think of. I started documenting everything while pretending everything was normal. I bought more cameras and recruited 2 other worried mothers. We took turns planting them and downloading footage. We documented every falsified record, every violation, every drugged child. I started requesting Oliver's daily reports and saving them, noting how they claimed he ate foods we'd never sent. I took photos of his diaper rashes that proved he wasn't being changed. I saved every happy Facebook post they made while children suffered. Unfortunately, this evidence gathering was cut short by what is now the worst day of my life, Thursday. Oliver came home from daycare unable to wake up properly. He was breathing but completely unresponsive. I rushed him to the emergency room where his blood test showed dangerous levels of diphenhydramine. The doctor pulled me aside looking grave. "This is consistent with a significant OD. Has he had access to any medications?" With trembling hands, I showed her a portion of the footage. I watched her face turn white as she saw them putting it in his bottle. "Oh my God," she whispered.
To see the full story, click the link below or go on my channel.